Mist clings low over the water as the first gray light of dawn touches the mountains surrounding the fjord. Somewhere below, nestled along the narrow strip of usable land between water and rock, a small village stirs slowly to life. This is Scandinavia, during the height of the Viking Age, a period when Norse seafarers traveled, traded, and settled across an extraordinary geographic range. Before we go further, it is worth addressing a persistent myth. Vikings did not wear horned helmets. No genuine archaeological evidence from the Viking Age supports horned helmets ever being worn. They were actually simple, practical, rounded metal caps. Scandinavia's mountainous terrain and short growing season meant usable farmland was limited, pushing settlements toward coastal locations where the sea supplemented agriculture. Winters brought not only bitter cold, but limited daylight, with the sun rising for only a few brief hours each day during the darkest months. Summers offered nearly continuous daylight, providing an intense growing season where farmers worked with urgency to harvest before the return of winter darkness. Smoke rises from the roof openings of several long buildings, evidence of families tending to fires that provide warmth, light, and heat. This village represents the foundation of Norse society, ordinary farming and fishing communities that made up the overwhelming majority of Viking Age life. As the mist slowly lifts and the fjord's calm water reflects the morning light, the true rhythm of Viking village life is ready to begin. At the center of Viking domestic life stood the longhouse, a structure whose basic design remained remarkably consistent across the entire Norse world, from Iceland to Norway, to Viking settlements as distant as Newfoundland. Constructed typically from timber framing filled with wattle and daub or turf walls, and topped with a thick thatched or turf roof, providing genuine insulation against harsh Scandinavian winters, the longhouse served as a combined living space, workshop, and during particularly cold weather, shelter for valuable livestock as well. Archaeological excavation of longhouse foundations confirms these structures typically measured between 15 and 30 meters in length, organized around a central hearth running down the building's long axis, providing both warmth and light for the entire household. Multiple generations of an extended family, along with any household servants, typically shared this single structure, sleeping on raised wooden platforms lining the longhouse walls, often covered with furs and woven textiles for warmth. Privacy by modern standards was essentially non-existent. Family life, work, meals, and sleep all occurred within the same shared space, divided perhaps only by hanging textiles or simple wooden partitions in wealthier households. The hearth fire burned continuously, serving for cooking and warmth, since settlements possessed no other light source beyond simple oil lamps. Smoke from this fire typically escaped through a small opening in the roof, though interiors were thick with smoke throughout much of the day. Household goods reveal a practical material culture: wooden bowls, iron cooking pots, and furniture like benches and storage chests. Wealthier households display more elaborate goods, including imported glassware, silver jewelry, and finely carved wooden furniture. Livestock frequently shared living space within the longhouse, with one end of the building sometimes partitioned to house cattle overnight. This arrangement offered practical benefits, since animal body heat helped warm the structure and kept livestock safe from theft or predation. Despite popular imagination's overwhelming focus on raiding and seafaring, the true economic foundation of nearly every Viking Age settlement rested on farming. It was a genuinely demanding undertaking given Scandinavia's challenging northern climate and limited fertile land. Barley and oats served as the primary grain crops, chosen for their tolerance of the region's relatively short and cool growing season. Livestock, particularly cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs, provided essential meat, milk, wool, and leather for the community. Archaeological analysis of animal bones confirms livestock husbandry represented an absolutely central component of the Norse agricultural economy. Norse farmers developed effective strategies for managing the climate, including careful hay production during the brief summer to ensure livestock feed. Failure to manage this seasonal hay supply could mean genuine disaster, forcing families to slaughter livestock they could not feed through winter. Fishing supplemented agricultural production significantly, particularly in coastal communities, where the sea provided a reliable food source throughout the year. Evidence confirms cod and herring represented particularly important catches, with sophisticated preservation techniques, like drying and salting. Women held significant responsibility within the economy, managing dairy production, textile manufacturing, and direct oversight of the entire farming operation. Surviving legal codes confirm Norse women held meaningfully greater property rights and legal standing compared to many other contemporary European societies. They had the right to own property, initiate divorce, and manage household finances independently. Preserving food represented a critical task. Beyond fish, families smoked meat and fermented dairy products into forms of cheese and skyr. Archaeological evidence of storage pits confirms Norse communities developed practical solutions to the fundamental challenge of surviving a northern winter. Beyond farming, Viking Age villages supported skilled craftsmen whose work proved absolutely essential to nearly every aspect of Norse daily life, trade, and, when necessary, warfare. Blacksmiths occupied a position of genuine practical importance within Norse society, producing tools, agricultural equipment, household items, and weapons from iron, smelted using bog iron ore, a naturally occurring iron deposit found throughout much of Scandinavia's wetland areas. Archaeological excavation of Viking Age smithing sites has recovered furnaces, tools, and partially completed iron objects, confirming a sophisticated tradition capable of producing everything from simple nails to elaborately decorated sword blades, demonstrating advanced pattern welding techniques. Textile production represented another cornerstone of Viking Age craft, conducted primarily by women within individual households, though larger settlements likely supported more specialized textile production as well. Wool, sheared from hardy sheep breeds, was spun into thread, then woven into cloth on upright looms, a genuinely time-intensive process that could require hundreds of hours of labor to produce even a single garment. Woodworking skills proved essential across nearly every aspect of Norse material culture, from household furniture and everyday tools, to the elaborately carved decoration found on wealthy households' most prized possessions, including chests, furniture, and most famously, the ships. Norse woodworkers demonstrated genuinely sophisticated skill in both practical construction and decorative carving, with surviving examples revealing artistic traditions of genuine complexity and skill. Jewelry making, particularly in silver and bronze, provided both practical currency function and genuine artistic expression within Viking Age society. Silver, frequently acquired through trade with distant regions including the Islamic world, was cast into arm rings, brooches, and pendants, sometimes cut into smaller pieces, known as hack silver, used directly as a practical medium of exchange in a society without standardized coinage. Craftsmen frequently combined practical function with genuine artistic ambition, decorating everyday objects with intricate interlocking animal and geometric patterns. This distinctive style appears consistently across an enormous range of surviving objects, from humble household items to the most elaborately decorated ship carvings, suggesting genuine artistic pride extended across nearly every level of Norse Age craft production, regardless of an object's function. No single technology defined the Viking Age more completely than the ship, an engineering achievement that allowed Norse sailors to travel remarkable distances. Viking ships, constructed using a technique known as clinker building, used overlapping wooden planks riveted together to form a flexible, seaworthy hull. The longship, narrow and built for speed, served for raiding and rapid transport, capable of navigating both open ocean and shallow rivers. Norse raiders could strike unexpectedly at coastal sites, or even substantial distances inland along navigable waterways. The broader, deeper Nar prioritized cargo capacity over speed, serving as the primary vessel for long-distance trade and colonizing voyages. These ships carried Norse settlers to Iceland, Greenland, and briefly to the coast of North America itself. Archaeological discoveries from burial mounds have provided historians with extraordinarily detailed evidence of Norse shipbuilding techniques. The Oseberg and Gokstad ships reveal sophisticated construction, combining practical seaworthiness with elaborate decorative carving. Navigation across open ocean relied on careful observation of the sun, stars, wave patterns, and the behavior of seabirds. Vikings may have used a specialized sunstone for navigation during cloudy conditions, though its use remains a subject of scholarly debate. These ships enabled trade routes connecting Scandinavia to the Islamic Caliphate and settlements in Iceland and Greenland. The Norse presence at Lanzo Meadows provides physical evidence that they reached the Americas centuries before Columbus. Building a large longship required the timber of dozens of mature oak trees, representing a significant investment of resources. Wealthy chieftains commissioned ships as demonstrations of status, with individual vessels becoming objects of pride and reputation. The image of the Viking raider, striking suddenly from the sea to plunder coastal settlements, holds genuine historical basis. But modern historians emphasize this represents only one part of a broader and more complex Norse economic and social reality. The Viking Age is often dated from the raid on the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793, recorded with shock by Christian chroniclers. Monasteries, undefended and holding religious treasures, represented attractive and largely unprotected targets for coastal raiders. Subsequent decades saw documented raiding activity across Europe, motivated by economic opportunity and Scandinavia's limited agricultural land. However, it is inaccurate to characterize the entire Norse population as primarily defined by raiding activity. The overwhelming majority of Norse Scandinavians lived as farmers, craftsmen, and traders who likely never participated in a single raid. Archaeological evidence of trade networks stretching from the Islamic Caliphate to the British Isles confirms that commercial exchange was more consistent. Norse traders established significant commercial settlements, like Birka and Hedeby, functioning as international trading hubs. Merchants exchanged furs and walrus ivory for silver and silk, arriving from distant regions like Byzantium and the Islamic world. The volume of Islamic silver coins recovered across Scandinavia provides physical evidence of how extensive these peaceful trade relationships were. Norse society also practiced slavery, with individuals captured during raids representing a significant component of the broader Norse economy. Raiding expeditions involved strategic planning, including reconnaissance of potential targets and coordination among multiple ship crews. Successful raiders returned with plunder that could transform a family's economic and social standing within their home community. Younger sons facing limited inheritance frequently sought fortune and reputation through these overseas raiding and trading expeditions. Norse society maintained a genuinely sophisticated system of law and governance, centered around a public assembly known as the Thing, where free members of the community gathered to resolve disputes, establish laws, and make significant collective decisions. These assemblies, held at regular intervals and typically at a designated meeting location, allowed free Norse men, and in certain documented circumstances women as well, to participate directly in legal proceedings, property disputes, and broader community decision-making. Iceland's assembly, known as the Althing, established in 930 and considered by many historians among the earliest continuously operating parliamentary institutions, provides particularly well-documented evidence of this genuinely participatory Norse legal tradition, with surviving Icelandic legal texts recording detailed procedures for everything from property inheritance to formal accusations of serious crime. Norse law relied heavily on a system of compensation rather than exclusively corporal or capital punishment for many offenses, with specific monetary payments known as vergild, established for various categories of harm, from minor property damage to serious injury or death. This system, while allowing wealthier individuals a genuine practical advantage in absorbing financial penalties, nonetheless provided a structured, predictable legal framework intended to prevent escalating cycles of private revenge between families or communities. Norse women's legal standing, while still operating within a broadly patriarchal social structure favoring male authority in most matters, included meaningful protections and rights not universally granted to women across contemporary, medieval Europe. Surviving Norse legal codes confirm women could own property independently, initiate divorce proceedings under specific documented circumstances, and, in the case of prominent or wealthy women, exercise genuine social and economic influence within their communities, occasionally including formal participation in legal assemblies themselves. Local chieftains held significant practical authority within their immediate communities, though Norse political structure during much of the Viking Age remained considerably less centralized than the emerging kingdoms of continental Europe, with power distributed among numerous regional leaders, rather than concentrated within a single unified national monarchy, until later in the Viking Age's overall historical timeline. Disputes brought before the Thing Assembly could involve genuinely serious matters, including accusations of murder, and surviving legal texts describe detailed procedures for presenting evidence, calling witnesses, and formally accusing or defending against charges. A defendant found guilty of severe crimes could face formal outlawry, a punishment that stripped the individual of legal protection entirely, meaning they could be killed without legal consequence by anyone. A stark illustration of how seriously Norse society treated social order, even in the relative absence of centralized royal enforcement power. Norse religious belief, centered around a pantheon of gods and goddesses, shaped fundamental aspects of Viking Age worldview, ritual practice, and cultural identity. Odin, god of wisdom, war, and poetry, held particular prominence, frequently associated with seeking knowledge through considerable personal sacrifice. Thor, god of thunder and protector of humanity, appears to have held widespread popular devotion among ordinary Norse farmers and warriors. Archaeological evidence, including numerous pendants shaped like Thor's hammer, suggests widespread personal devotion extending well beyond formal ritual contexts. Much of our knowledge comes from texts written down considerably later, particularly by the Icelandic scholar Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century. Historians regard these later sources as valuable but imperfect windows into earlier oral tradition, since Snorri wrote within a Christian cultural context. Norse cosmology envisioned a universe structured around 9 interconnected worlds, connected by the great world tree Yggdrasil. Human existence was understood as taking place within Midgard, one world among several inhabited by gods, giants, and other supernatural beings. Concepts of fate held particular significance, with even the gods understood as subject to an inevitable final battle and world-ending event known as Ragnarok. Ordinary practice likely combined household rituals, seasonal festivals, and, for warriors, genuine belief in reaching Valhalla to feast alongside Odin. Historians note this warrior-focused afterlife likely held significance primarily for the warrior class, rather than representing every ordinary Norse farmer. Freya, associated with love and fertility, also received half of those who died in battle, with the remainder going to Odin's hall. Female religious specialists known as vulvas practiced a specific form of divination called satyr, and were respected, if sometimes feared, figures. They were called upon for prophecy and guidance during times of significant uncertainty or crisis. Throughout the Viking Age, Norse Age burial practices varied considerably, depending on regional custom, individual wealth, and social status, though archaeological excavation across Scandinavia has revealed remarkably rich and detailed evidence regarding how the Norse understood and prepared for death. Ship burials represent perhaps the most visually striking form of Norse Age burial practice, reserved specifically for individuals of wealth and status. The Oseberg ship burial, discovered in Norway, contained not only an elaborately carved ship, but an extraordinary array of grave goods. Items included textiles, wooden carts, sleighs, and household items, providing a window into elite Norse Age material culture and burial custom. More typical Norse burials, reflecting ordinary farming families, involved simpler grave arrangements, sometimes including modest goods like tools or jewelry. Cremation alongside direct burial was practiced across various regions, with regional and chronological variation in which practice predominated. Grave goods reflected an individual's life, weapons for warriors, textile tools for women, and craft tools for skilled artisans. These deliberate choices by surviving family members offer archaeologists insight into Norse Age social roles and individual identity. The precise details of Norse funeral rituals remain only partially understood, depending on physical evidence and later written accounts. Arab traveler Ahmad ibn Fadlan witnessed a Norse ship burial along the Volga River, providing a vivid description of their funeral custom. Burial mounds raised over graves of high-status individuals remain visible today, serving as markers of memory and social standing. These sites functioned as focal points of community memory, identity, and family political legitimacy across multiple succeeding generations. The Viking Age gradually drew to a close over the 11th century, shaped by a combination of factors including the widespread conversion of Scandinavia to Christianity, the increasing political centralization of Norse kingdoms under stronger royal authority, and changing military and political circumstances across the broader regions. Norse raiders and traders had once operated within with considerable freedom. Christianization proceeded gradually across Scandinavia, often driven by political calculation as much as genuine religious conviction. As Norse kings recognized the diplomatic and administrative advantages of aligning with the dominant religious framework of neighboring European kingdoms. This transition did not eliminate Norse cultural identity or historical memory, however, with many of the mythological stories and sagas actually written down by Christian Icelandic scholars generations after the formal conversion, preserving pre-Christian Norse tradition, even while reshaping it through a distinctly Christian literary and cultural lens. Norse settlements and trade networks established during the Viking Age left lasting historical impact well beyond Scandinavia itself. The Norse settlement of Iceland developed into a genuinely distinct society, with its own rich literary tradition, while Norse political and cultural influence in the British Isles, France, particularly the region that took its name directly from the Norse settlers, and parts of Eastern Europe left enduring genetic, linguistic, and cultural traces still studied by historians today. Modern archaeological research continues actively refining our understanding, moving away from the simplistic, often exaggerated raider stereotype toward a considerably more nuanced picture of a genuinely sophisticated trading, farming, and seafaring culture, whose reach, through both peaceful commerce and violent conflict, extended across an extraordinary geographic range. For a society operating without the navigational technology later explorers would eventually take for granted. Standing today at the site of a reconstructed longhouse, or looking upon the excavated remains of an actual Viking Age ship recovered from Scandinavian soil, it becomes possible to see past the horned helmets and dramatic raiding imagery toward the genuine daily reality of Norse Age life. Farmers watching their barley grow beneath uncertain northern skies, craftsmen shaping iron and wood with genuine skill, and sailors setting out across open water guided only by sun, stars, and generations of accumulated hard-won knowledge. The fjords remain, the mountains still stand silent watch above them, and somewhere beneath centuries of soil, the ships wait patiently for someone still willing to uncover them and relive the voyage.